The chandeliers shimmered like stars, but the air was brittle with tension. The ruthless producer leaned into the mic, his voice dripping with mockery. "We honor legends tonight, though some cling to values best left in museums." Laughter trickled through the crowd like an uneasy wind. But Morgan Freeman didn't blink. He sat tall in his velvet-collared tux, hands folded, eyes fixed like granite on stage. He took a slow sip of water. No rush, no tremble, just timeless stillness. The producer's grin widened, sensing blood. "I mean, who needs empathy when we've got AI now, right?" The room shifted. Some chuckled, some froze. The power elite watched for Morgan's move, but the silence that followed wasn't empty. It pulsed. It warned. Morgan lowered the glass, voice unspoken but presence deafening. His gaze locked with the producer's, calm, unreadable, unshakable. A single camera flash went off, then stopped, as if the lens itself hesitated. The host cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to steer the moment elsewhere. But the tension had already split the evening open like a fault line. Morgan adjusted his cufflinks, gaze still burning, not rising, yet. A flicker of thought crossed the producer's smug face. Was that doubt? He laughed again, weaker this time, scanning the room for support. But the crowd was still, waiting. Morgan leaned slightly forward, his voice finally rising, velvet-wrapped iron. "I've lived long enough to see mirrors mistaken for windows," he said. Gasps stirred like distant thunder. The producer blinked. His jaw twitched. Morgan hadn't raised his volume, just his truth, and the weight of it bent the air. The producer gave a brittle chuckle, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve like Morgan's words were harmless. "Oh, Morgan," he said, voice tight. "You've got poetry, but this is progress." He raised a hand theatrically to the audience. "Let's not get sentimental about dinosaurs, folks." Laughter, forced, scattered, rippled through the room like clinking glass. But the air felt warped now, bent around something heavier. Morgan didn't move. He didn't need to. The producer took a step closer on stage, pointing to the giant screen behind him. It flashed a sizzle reel. Explosions, A-list cameos, synthetic voices mimicking actors long gone. "Speed, scale, spectacle," he boomed. "That's what the future demands. Not slow sermons and moral bedtime stories." He looked down at Morgan, voice curdling. Your nostalgia, warm, fading." The words sliced like ice, but Morgan blinked slowly, like time itself bent to his rhythm. He stood. A soft gasp pulsed from the front row. Chairs creaked. Even the cameras seemed to zoom in on instinct. Morgan stepped onto the stage, not rushed, not theatrical, just inevitable. He didn't take the mic. He didn't need to. He turned toward the screen, watching the manic montage play out in cold bursts of sound and color. Then he looked at the audience, voice just loud enough to reach the edges. "We've confused noise with meaning," he said, each word clean, deliberate. The producer tried to interject, but the crowd wasn't looking at him anymore. Morgan's voice wove through the gala like smoke through a cathedral. "I've spent a lifetime telling stories, not selling distractions," he said. "And I've learned this. The louder they shout, the less they listen." The screen flickered, almost like it flinched. The room leaned in closer. The producer crossed his arms, mouth tight. "You think a bedtime voice can stop evolution?" Morgan turned slowly to face him. "No," he said, gaze unshaken. "But it can remind people what it means to be awake." The room held its breath. Even silence felt loud now. Her fire was rising. The producer's smirk cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. His fingers tapped nervously on the mic. All right, he said, voice brittle. "Mr. Freeman wants to make this sentimental." He tried a smile, but it wavered under the weight of watching eyes. "Let's give him his Oscar speech moment, shall we?" he said, voice laced with sarcasm. But even the chuckles didn't come this time. Morgan hadn't moved, and somehow that said more than 1,000 gestures. He turned to the audience, his voice low but resonant, like thunder rolling beneath calm waters. There was a time, Morgan said, when stories meant something, not just how loud or fast they could be sold. A hush spread like silk across the room, eyes locked in, phones lowered. Stories helped us understand each other, he continued, not just consume one another. He let the pause sit there, alive, uncomfortable, sacred, and for a moment, even the lights felt dimmer in reverence. The producer stepped forward, impatient. This isn't a TED Talk, Morgan. Morgan's gaze didn't flinch. No, he said. It's an intervention. A faint gasp stirred from the second-tier balcony. You've got all this power, Morgan said, and you use it to belittle, to silence, to erase. His voice didn't rise, it deepened, rooted in soul. Power without purpose is noise. The producer's face tightened, his tongue clicking against his teeth. You think I need your blessing? Morgan didn't answer with words. He stepped aside from the mic, then walked slowly to the edge of the stage. From his inner pocket, he pulled a worn piece of paper, creased, aged, loved. He unfolded it gently. The room watched, breathless. His voice returned, softer than before, but undeniable. My mother gave me this, he said. A quote by Baldwin. She said if I ever lost my way, I should read it out loud. His eyes scanned the page, but he already knew the words. Not everything that is faced can be changed, he recited. But nothing can be changed until it is faced. The crowd fell completely still. The producer's face twitched like static, eyes darting for support that no longer stood beside him. He straightened, voice strained. That's a beautiful quote, Morgan. But we're in the business of reality, not romance. A few executives glanced down at their shoes. The silence didn't feel safe anymore. He forced a grin. People want fast, flashy, and filtered. They don't want to feel. Morgan stepped closer. Just one step. It felt like the whole stage shifted beneath him. I spent my life giving voice to stories that shaped hearts, Morgan said, voice smooth as Riverstone. Not algorithms, not edits, but hearts. He looked out into the velvet dark crowd. And if we stop giving people truth wrapped in meaning, his eyes flicked back to the producer. Then we've traded mirrors for shadows. A murmur stirred from somewhere up front. Small, stunned. Even the sound guy sat frozen, hands off the controls. The producer's voice turned desperate, cracking beneath its own performance. Oh, come on, he spat. You think standing up here with your grandfather wisdom changes the game? Morgan turned his head slowly, like the question itself needed to breathe before dying. I'm not here to change the game, he said. I'm here to remind it of its soul. A pause. Then someone clapped. Not loud, not staged. Just one slow clap from a woman in the back, deliberate, defiant. It echoed more than the producer's last 5 sentences combined. Others followed. A few, then a wave. But Morgan didn't react. Not yet. He still had something left to give. He looked directly into the camera, lens blinking red. And to every young voice watching, whose truth has been muted, reshaped, erased. He paused, breath calm but full of storm. You are not outdated. You are not too soft. You are not small. The producer exhaled sharply, but nobody looked at him anymore. Morgan's gaze stayed steady. You are the story, don't forget it. Morgan stepped back from the edge of the stage, letting the room settle like dust after thunder. The applause didn't need volume. It had weight, soul, reverence. He nodded once. No bows, no smiles, just a man who stood up when it counted. He turned to the producer, who now looked like a statue chipped by time. I never needed your stage, Morgan said. I gave it meaning. The producer opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked around as if the walls might speak for him, but the room was no longer his. He was just a man in a suit, not a god with a mic. And in Morgan's quiet shadow, he looked smaller than he ever had before. His smirk, gone, his arrogance, dissolved. Morgan stepped down from the stage. People parted like sea from shore. A producer's assistant, barely 23, brushed tears from her eyes. Someone whispered, That's what real power sounds like. Cameras didn't dare zoom. This wasn't a moment to steal. It was one to feel, and the feeling would linger. He paused at the doors, turning one last time to the crowd. His voice, now softer than ever, still rang clear. Legacy isn't what you keep, it's what you leave behind in others. Heads nodded, some wept. Even the ones who once laughed sat still. And the gala didn't cheer, it breathed. The producer stayed rooted in place, the lights no longer his to command. Morgan never looked back as he exited. He didn't need to. The final story had already been told. No edits, no filters, just truth. A legend had spoken, and the room would never forget the sound. Moved by this, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to receive amazing stories like this one. What part hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments.